Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today we're going to be talking about parts of ourselves that we have disowned effectively. But before we do that, we're going to start with a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
So let's start off. I feel some like deep sighs. Maybe we'll just start with that. Just connecting to a deep sigh or two or three. Let's practice connecting to that audible sigh, right? The sigh that makes a sound. Oh, and now as I do this, let's pair it with movement of the shoulders. So we can inhale, just bring the shoulders up to the ears. Audible sigh, just drop the shoulders. And we'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling through the nose, bring the shoulders up to the ears. Exhale, drop the shoulders. Like really like drop them. Let them really fall. And then just follow your body's impulse for any other movement. Ooh.
Wow.
So every time we start a podcast, we like to think of a body connection practice we can share with you. And sometimes we have a plan, and always, I assume you do stuff too, go with like body impulse and intuition in the end. And this is a reminder for you to follow your body. Notice what your body wants and needs, right? There's tons of ways to connect to our bodies. They don't have to be all scripted. You don't have to follow someone's instructions. If you are willing to pay attention to what your body wants, or to give yourself the opportunity just to try something and see how your body feels, your body will tell you something. And for some reason, even as you were introducing us today on the podcast, I don't know if you can hear it on the recording, but I was like deep in like a deep sigh. I was like, oh, I think my body needs some deep sighs. And as I was letting myself do that, I was reminded of how good it feels and how significant it was for me in my life to practice the audible sigh, the out loud sigh that sounds loud or it sounds funny. Because I was so used to being the quiet one, the proper one. Don't make silly sounds. Don't make silly noises. Just sit and be quiet and don't open your mouth unless you have something very useful to say. And so I always find that a practice like this, so simple of an audible sigh, it's easy for me now. And before it was sort of scary and mortifying. I didn't want to be the one making weird sounds and I was worried about being judged. And so playing with this was so good for me to rewrite that pattern that I'm allowed to have a voice and it doesn't have to be perfect, whatever that means in my mind. And so the audible sigh is great. And then as I was like in that sigh, I remembered how nice it feels to really drop the shoulders. And it's a very different feeling. I don't know if you noticed it, Steph. It's a very different feeling than slowly letting your shoulders fall down. When it's this like, I've held them up and now it's time to just unload. And I've done that with clients before, and we just do 3 at a time. And immediately they feel lighter, even though nothing in their life has changed. No circumstances have changed, but something about that movement paired with that sigh, they feel like, oh, whatever I was carrying, the stress or worries or to-do lists in my mind, I can just let it all go. And they feel that sense of letting go in their body.
Someone on one of our calls the other day talked about the shoulds on the shoulders. That's the vibe I get. There's this thunk of release, letting go of the shoulds. Being in the moment. What you say also reminds me of there's the information from our bodies, which I think is like sort of the beginning of all things. When you're present with your body, you can be present more with the energies around you. And then that for me is the second piece. There's the energy of what your body is bringing, and then there's the energy of the moment. And this makes me think of women's group years ago. I was feeling a way that I wouldn't have been able to identify years previously, which was annoyed and like angsty, and like my body wanted to have a physical tantrum. And I ran into Shay at the Greens Plus before, or whatever it was called, Greens, around the corner from the
Greens
building.
Market, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I feel like I need to have a tantrum. And then she was like, well, maybe that's what we're doing tonight. And then someone else, when we got to the building, was feeling like feisty in some kind of way. And they threw out whatever their plan had been for the night, if there had been one. And it was tantrums for everybody. And that was exactly correct, right? They're with the moment and feeling what's true.
I think that always creates, at least in my experience, as a participant and a facilitator in formal things like workshops, but also in life, to be able to find that dance between like some structure and a plan, and then the freedom to like just be with what is and what needs to happen in the moment. And I think just that way of living life feels a lot easier for me. I used to be much more rigid, much more like wanting to know the 15 steps in advance. And it would create a lot of safety for me to know those in advance and to be able to just execute one step after the other. And nothing was really influenced by, I don't think, body or how I felt at the time. And to be able to appreciate and lean on structure and have space to just be like, that's not what we're doing today. Something else is being called for right now.
Yeah.
And I see in my work with, I was thinking with parents, but actually it's with everyone, that people struggle to see that you can change your plan for yourself, for the day, for the month, for the quarter, for the year, right? Sometimes we have a plan and we can see that it's not going according to plan because other circumstances have come up, or circumstances that we didn't really take into account how they would impact us and our capacity. And we just try to push through and just make it happen. And there's so much frustration there and just unnecessary, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah. Not presence.
Not presence. And actually this leads me to something I would share a lot with people in one-on-ones and in groups, which was, do your expectations match your reality? I don't know why I'm just thinking of this right now. I know we're talking about like having structure and flow, and it reminds me of this, is like, what is your current reality? And can you be very specific, listing it out? And what are your current expectations of yourself? And do those expectations match that reality in any way? Or are you bound to be frustrated because that gap is big? And that gap, I like to call it the frustration gap. Like the further away your expectations are from reality, the bigger that gap is. And so people will practice with me shifting their expectations to match the current reality more. And they're like, oh, all of a sudden I don't feel so much pressure. All of a sudden I don't feel guilty. Look at that.
Look at that. Yeah.
This
is reminding me of what I think I'll dare to call a fundamental difference between men and women in dating. And I see this so much when you're talking about the frustration gap. You're making me think of Darcy from 90 Day Fiancé and what she expects.
I don't know
of
Darcy,
men.
but I'll listen.
That's great. She's a bit of a trope, very has had all of the surgeries to look, exactly the way she wants to look. She's got an exact trajectory of how relationships are supposed to go and what she expects from men in terms of when a proposal should come, and everything is, she's really got a set schedule for how things should go, right? And I think this is a natural thing for us to have, especially as women who are biologically designed to be gathering data, making sure we're not exposing the tribe to poisons and can carry on for many generations, right? And I think a lot of the time, men are feeling into the situation and the energy that's at hand. So he doesn't have a set schedule of how things are going to go. He wants to plunk himself in this moment with this woman and see how it feels. And if it consistently feels good, then we're going to hop on the trajectory of relationship. And, he'll have his own idea of what that trajectory should look like.
Mm-hmm.
But she arrives and she's never in the moment. He'll be sitting there, present, looking at her, and she's flitting around in her head. She's already got some agenda of what she wants to say to him and what needs to be accomplished for like this coffee date or whatever it is. And I often think as I'm watching her, this man is just here and present with you, feeling into the moment. What magic might occur if you were able to meet him there instead of sticking to this schedule that he's not even aware exists,
Yeah, he's not aware it exists, and yet you're judging him according to that schedule in your mind. And then that's
Yeah.
the energy that we would be bringing to that moment, right? I've been
Yeah.
there. I've been that woman. I've been that
Right.
person. And it
Yeah.
feels so good to know how to just live in the present moment and enjoy who's in front of you
Yeah.
and like
It's about
let things
discovering magic
unfold.
in the moment. Yeah, letting things unfold. Exactly. Because that's how we're going to discover what the thing is. We're not going to discover it based on answers to a series of questions with our predetermined ideas of what all of it means.
I feel offense. My old self feels offense in what you just said.
Me too. Me
Because
too.
I'm such a curious person, and I think I can have a list of questions without even having a list. Like, I just know what my questions are.
Yeah.
And
Those are honest in the moment questions though, right? Like you're naturally curious. You're not going like, I'm curious. How many women have you dated in like it's really intense. They're judgment
um
questions.
I would hope to say that I've never really been like the interrogation kind of question asker. Like, it is a genuine curiosity. However, to be honest, I remember times where I was in a relationship, maybe it was a newish relationship, and I would have like, before getting on the phone with this person, I would have sort of like talking points in my mind and be like
Mm,
thinking about, well, what do I want to talk about? Like, I have to make the conversation interesting, or, like I want to gather some information or something. Like, there was some intention there other than I want to be present and connect with this person and see where the conversation goes, right? That was also a big part of me. And I had this other part that was a little
yeah,
bit more of the planner, right?
right.
And I remember in the moment how my body would feel when I was like, what was that question again? What was that question I wanted to ask? And you
Mm,
totally take yourself away from the moment, the
yeah,
flow of what's happening and the presence of just connecting and letting things come out as they come out. And I do remember being like, forget it. I don't care what the question is. Like, let's just come back to here. And I remember how good of a feeling that was to like let that
right.
list go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to follow genuine curiosity, like you'll say, "Oh, I'm curious," and you can tell you actually are curious, I think that's a phrase that's kind of been co-opted. And I think a lot of the questions that we can ask each other, especially in this 90-day fiance context, people will say like, "Oh, I'm curious." But really what they mean is like, I'm trying to make you see something in a certain way. Or like the questions won't be because I'm genuinely interested in getting to know you. It's like, demonstrate to me that you aren't a shitbag. Prove it.
I think that's a muscle. It reminds me of the curiosity muscle. And I think I have a very large, well used curiosity muscle. And yet at the same time, that's a muscle that's just easy for me. There's also a part of a curiosity that's harder for me, which is when I just want to judge you. and I'm angry with you. And it's very
Yeah.
hard for me. It's much harder for me to tap into that curiosity muscle. And so this is a practice I would suggest to people. I've been doing it and I really enjoy it. And it goes off of, we've shared this in group before. I see and I wonder. Right? I see, I feel, I wonder, I think is the three that we do. And it would be like right now I see a painting on my wall. Right now I feel like some tightness in my upper chest. I also feel a stone in my hand. I wonder what I'm having for dinner tonight. Like the I wonder can be anything, right? And what it does, it really helps you be present because you're doing the I see and the I feel. And so you're present to your surroundings, you're present to your body, and you grow that curiosity muscle. I wonder. But I took it a step further. I've been doing that for a while in my life and I really enjoy it. But I remember driving some months ago and I thought, I'm going to choose a random person and just look at them. They have no idea I'm looking at them. And I would say to myself, I wonder what's exciting for this person right now in their life. And then I just be with that question and be with breath and just wonder. No idea. I wonder what is a stress for this person right now. I wonder what they're struggling with right now. And I would ask myself, like, I don't know, maybe those three questions or one of those three. And it would always make me feel more compassionate, even though I know nothing about the person. Right? It helps me see that this is an actual person who has something that's going well in their life, something they're stressing over, something they might be having a hard time with. And I noticed it just softened me. It took me out of autopilot and it just softened me to like, these are people around us. Right? And I do that to grow my ability to feel connected to people because I feel like it's really easy just to be in your own little bubble. And I do it also because I know there's going to be times with people who are important to me in my life where I get triggered by something and it's going to be hard for me to connect to my curiosity. I'm just going to want to judge. My feelings are going to be hurt. And I want to take time to grow my curiosity muscle in times where I'm not feeling emotionally heightened. So that's been a fun one to practice.
That's beautiful. I think the word wonder specifically inspires something sort of magical and soft and like childlike and innocent.
Yeah, so
Beautiful.
I like that. I wonder. So if you were to do I see, I feel, I wonder, what would it be right now? Because I'm wondering what you would wonder about.
Cute. I see a book. I feel my bra strap is too tight. I wonder where that other book is that my mom was talking about the other day.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. I like being present to someone else's wonder. Because I think you get to know someone, a different side of someone, when you get to hear what they wonder about.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and I like having peeks into people's brains. It's lovely to discover what's happening for people internally. That's one of my favorite things.
This seems like a nice little connection game you could play with someone too, like with your partner, your friend, or someone. I see, I feel, I wonder. I think on one of our episodes, we talked about rose, thorn, bud in a really embodied way, right? How we talk about what's good in our lives, what's a rose, what's a thorn, what's challenging, and what's a bud, what's emerging. And I've been hearing lately from several clients who have children, and they say, I taught that, we did that at dinner time or something. My kids ask for it all the time. Rose, thorn, bud. Can we do rose, thorn, bud?
Cute.
And so it makes me think of this too. I see, I feel, I wonder. Imagine if you brought that more into your life, not just on your own, but with people you care about, and just play it like a little game. What you would discover about them, what you like together get to grow your muscle of being present.
That's so
sort of fun.
sweet. That's really highlighting for me how much I turned off my curiosity faculty. And actually, this ties in what we were going to talk about today is parts of ourselves we've shut off.
Mm.
Um, and I think when we first talking about this, we were talking about the parts of ourselves that we're not aware yet, are reflected in our parents, parts of our parents that drove us nuts, or that we said we'd never be like that, or things in other people, qualities, features that turn us off or make us feel some kind of irritation. And that will almost always be something that is within us that we've disowned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, one of the things was my mom's really good at asking questions and getting to the heart of a thing. And as a younger person, I saw that as like prying and needling and trying. There probably were some layers there of trying to get me to be a certain way that I didn't feel like I was. And as an adult now, who sees that reflected tremendously in myself, I realize it's an effort to understand and to connect, right? And I think
Mm.
in my aversion to that, I became a non-questioner, a non-question asker,
Mm.
a non-curious person. I might go, seek out information myself, but maybe not in such a relational way. And so
Mm.
my faculty, if you were to ask me, what do I wonder? I think the answer would be, well, I don't wonder anything. Maybe I wonder something about like physics in the universe, something not here.
Mm.
um, yeah.
That's really neat. I like that you mentioned, like, I might have curiosity, but not in the relational way. And I
Mm,
just imagine if we all got more curious in the relational way, what the quality of our relationships would be like, and what the sense of connection would be like that we feel in our lives. Right?
mm,
Because it's one thing to be curious about facts and things, and that might feel good, but it's still missing a very human component to it. Right?
yeah,
You can be very curious and still feel very isolated.
yeah.
And I wonder how we can bring more relational curiosity into our lives. And relational curiosity can be like tapped into just solo. Like I sit by myself and I wonder about the people in my life, or I wonder about strangers.
Mm,
But it can also be done with someone, like by asking them questions.
mm,
And I remember you said something to me one day, and you said, "You ask such great questions," or something like that. And it sort of surprised me. So I was like, oh, I never considered them like great questions. I'm just curious. I just want to know. But I
that's
guess like
related.
it really, yeah, I guess it really does help me connect with people.
Uh-huh. I'm so currently in my life, this is being reflected to me hugely, um, in different ways. With my mom asking questions that I now feel totally open to connecting about, and that's such a lovely feeling. And then there's someone in my life who doesn't ask any questions at all, which highlights how much I might not ask questions and like how it feels to be
Mm.
on the receiving end of that. And the difference between your genuine curiosity, which has this like excitement and relationality about it, versus these like questions you're supposed to ask. Like there's this weird vibe of
Mm.
like, oh, here's now the polite question to ask. So it's sort of a fake, it's not real. It's just by rote, and that it
Hmm.
has like no energy to it and doesn't create any connection, and it's
Yeah.
such a different feeling.
Yeah. I think at the root of my curiosity, I don't think I was in touch with this as a child. Um, but definitely as I got older, it's very clear to me. I have a desire to know you, like
Mm,
whether it's you in front of me or somebody else in front of me. And I have a desire to be known. So my curiosity is coming from that place. That's why I
mm,
think my questions don't sound or feel rote, or mechanical, because I really like underneath that is a desire to know who you are.
mm,
And when I think about it, when I think about all of our relationships, whether they're professional relationships or family relationships, intimate relationships, like we all want to be known, right? So when you're willing to ask questions from that place of, I want to know you, I want to know you, and discover you. It's a really special thing. And it's different from, I want to know you so I can judge you.
Yeah,
It's like, I want to
totally.
know you so that I can delight in you and understand you and see what your quirks are and tell you what my quirks are. And it's
Yeah.
very different. And I can see sometimes, for the most part, like I've never really encountered anyone who feels that I'm intruding, or I've never gotten that feedback. And at the same time, I can imagine, even with my past, that I was asked questions as a kid, but from that place of like, are you doing things right? Did you think about
Mm,
this? Right? It wasn't like, let me share myself with you. It's, oh God, can I answer the question right? Or if
yeah.
I don't answer the question right, am I in trouble? And are you judging me? And
Yeah.
what are you trying to figure out right now?
Right? And I think we can take that. So that was the experience I had of receiving questions. So then
Mm,
that's the energy I returned to the world, right? When
mm,
someone was just curiously trying to get to know me, I was feeling like pried on and put upon, and like I had to have a certain answer, and that I was being judged, when in fact I wasn't.
mm. That's neat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot in there. So opening up my curiosity muscle um, has been a job. It's
Hmm.
probably still a job.
So were you were you intentional about, hey, I notice I'm very closed off to that from my experience of, people's curiosity.
Hmm.
And I think it would benefit me to sort of discover that part of me a little bit more. Was it that intentional, or like, how was it?
More of being in flow than of asking questions, and of flow questions will arise, right? Like I
Mm.
think I've talked before about having lists when I started online dating, having
Yeah.
pre-written lists of things we could talk about,
Hmm. Yeah.
that kind of thing, I think was part of the opening. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's also true for me that I am much more curious. I often don't have a lot of questions for what's going on around me, because it's obvious in most cases what's going on around me and with the people around me. And my questions can be prying, or if it's not that the questions are prying, it's that the information I seek might be quite deep and hard to face and they might not, they just want to have a
Mm.
nice day. And I'm like, tell me your deepest, darkest truth, and they're like, I don't even want to look at that, man. Get out of my business. So it's, I don't have like lighthearted curiosity in the same way that you do. Um, and in a way that's avoiding relationship or certain types of relationship. I think it's also true that, and this, my human design chart tells me this as well, that I'm a well that is drawn from. So the
Mm.
people and energies I'm around are going to elicit things from me in a certain way. So if I'm around a curious person, and this is probably true for everybody, I will become more curious. It'll set me on that sort of
Right.
track. Um, yeah, certain people would cause me to be chatty and ask questions, and like there's a way to be inspired, I think. And then there's your
Hmm.
natural way as well. Like there's so many layers to how we show up with people.
Yeah. This reminds me, like you said something just now that I think is important, which is, I think you said something like, you're a deep person. Your curiosities run deep, when you have a curiosity about someone. And I think you said, and that also is a way to keep separate from people, right? If you just
Mm.
assume not everybody wants to go deep, or, people don't want to go deep, and that's the only way you want to connect. And it reminds me that there was a time in my life that I was also really connected to that deep part of me. Like, I don't want to have superficial conversations. I want to have conversations that are meaningful in some way, at least in my definition of meaningful. And I wanted to look at, in what way do I cut off from connection? By deeming myself, I'm a deep person, and that's the only kind of connection I enjoy, right?
Mm.
And that if you can't connect with me in that way, then we're just not meant for each other, and there's going to be no connection, or whatever it is. And it reminded me of, like, like
Sorry.
when you stand. I used to stand at the bus stop and you would ask people, you'd talk about the weather, I don't know, something superficial.
Yeah.
But like, I like using those moments and really like connecting with a person. Like maybe you're talking in Vancouver, you're talking about it's raining again, but there's some way that you can talk about it's raining again where you really feel like, hey, I see you as a person. We're like sharing this moment together that is a little bit more connected than that rote thing you just say to someone you're standing next to because you're killing time together. So that
Yeah.
has been something I've practiced. Like, how do I create meaningful moments with random strangers over nothing in particular, but you just have a moment together? And I always feel better after those moments. And I've never, like, I feel like it's a mutual moment, you know?
Yeah. But so what you're describing is a deep moment with a stranger, right? For me, there'd be a superficial version of that where there isn't that connection. Like, oh yeah, the weather, like, yeah, we're not even really talking to each other thing. But when it's like, no, like the weather, there's a depth there, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love
And
those as well.
yeah, those are sweet moments. And like sometimes I try even with people, even people who are like not, there is no openness for depth coming from their side. But like I still give that energy of like, I see you. I'll
Mm.
smile. I'll say a genuine hello.
Mhm.
And I'm like, my belief is it can't ruin their day.
Yeah, yeah. I used to work with this woman who would say, "How are you?" Which is so different than "How are you?" And
Mm-hmm.
if there was like a "How are you?" she'd be like, "No, how are you?" Oh, you actually want to know how I am. This is not a throwaway sentence that's polite, you know? Such a difference,
Well, this is
tiny,
what's
tiny.
interesting. When I moved to the Netherlands, I noticed that they don't say that to people. They don't say how are you? Like in the way we say how are you? And I was talking to my Dutch friends about it. They're like, because when you ask that, you don't actually care. So why are you asking that? And it was really neat to see that in, I think, North American culture. It's more like it's just sort of like a greeting more
Yeah.
than a genuine curiosity of how you are. Because I remember my Dutch friends would be like, if I sat here and actually told you what was going on in my life, do you think that that's what the shop owner is asking me? Like, that's not what the shop owner is asking me. So why are you asking me that? Why are you saying that to me?
Interesting. That's
So,
making me think of the version of "How are you?" which is "What's good?" which leaves no room for
hmm,
what's not good. And that's always struck me as being an interesting hello.
where's that from? What's good?
The world. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay. I don't think anyone's asked me that before. But also, no one's asked
Mm.
me what's bad.
Yeah, that's probably how I'd respond to what's good. Gotta balance it out. Oh, it's funny.
Well, I
What was
remember
the
actually a point in my life where when people asked me like how I was, that instead of saying like I'm good, I'm fine, that I would actually start saying how I was
mm,
just to practice. And like I think some people were like, "Oh, okay, we're going there." And
mm,
others it would just feel a little bit smoother, but it was just good practice for me to not just
mm,
say good, fine, everything's great
yeah.
all the
But
time
right,
as
we
a
need to
standard
be
answer.
yeah. That's so important. Like that's it's self-connection, right? All of these things we're talking about require some degree of self-awareness and willingness to share and like ability to share, to know what's going on for us. Um, that includes our own curiosity and being able to respond to the curiosity of other people.
This reminds me of in our group work that we do, we'll walk people through a practice and exercise, and like that's all great. You know, you can learn a lot of stuff from different places. I really enjoy the things we practice with people. But another layer of what we practice with people is to take a moment to notice how that felt to do. And then we practice sharing with the group what you noticed about that exercise. And it could be seen as, oh, we're just curious what you noticed. But it goes like so much deeper than that, because we want people to practice a few things. We want you to practice noticing how your body feels when you do something and how it feels after you do something, and to be able to share that with someone, another human being, because that's like the basis of healthy relationship, is your ability to know what's going on with you and have the courage and willingness to let someone see that, to share that with them. And I'm always surprised by how powerful those moments are when someone is just sharing what they noticed about a simple body connection practice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
and
big for
people will
people.
say, "Oh, I need to practice. I need to practice sharing."
Yeah.
Right? How many
Um,
What were you going to say?
Women who are practicing using their voice, that's,
Mhm.
someone will often pipe up and say, I'm practicing taking up space, so I'm going to share, what came up for me during this practice. And I
Mhm.
remember that being just a huge stage of my learning and growth. And you get all hot in the face and your voice gets all trembly and you're wondering what other people think. And it's just this simple exercise in sharing what experience you had during a body-based connection process,
Mhm. Which, when you think about it, like, how many of us don't share what's really going on with us with the people closest to us, because we're afraid to burden them, we're afraid that they're going to judge us. And so that is a muscle that a lot of us need to practice. Notice how something impacts me, and then have the willingness and courage to share that with someone
Right.
and feel
And
the
it's so
discomfort of that.
relatable. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Because before you feel the liberation of that, I think you feel the discomfort of that.
for sure. Yeah. And inevitably, it's true. We're afraid what other people are going to think. We feel like we're not good enough, or we're stupid for having had this thought or feeling, or that there's some other expectation of us. And as soon as we share with it, and then, we'll often ask who can relate, and everybody can relate. And then suddenly you feel seen and met and heard and understood and not alone. And all of this springs from being able to notice what's happening within you and articulate it to others. We're not unique. None of
Mhm.
our thoughts or feelings are unique. This is a shared experience. And I think kind of the whole point of being alive on Earth is being able to connect with each other about that.
Mhm. This then reminds me of, we were talking a little bit on which parts of ourselves we cut off from. And this is from, I think, watching my family when I grew up, and also extended family. Like, in Chinese culture, or at least the culture I grew up in, you don't want your family to lose face. Like, is that a Western thing? Like, do you know what that phrase
No,
means?
I
Okay.
do. Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, that's not a Canadian premise. No.
Right? Of like, I guess you don't want to embarrass your family. I guess maybe you don't want to air out your dirty laundry. You want people to have good judgments of your family. And so I don't think it was very common to tell people how you really are and what's really going on with your family. So this idea,
Actually,
this
in
notion of
Japanese
like,
culture, there's two different
mhm,
words for that. There's what you show to the people, and then there's how you really feel, which are two different things.
okay, yeah. So I
Yeah.
feel like that was my life, right? You
Yeah.
sort of maybe you have your own experience, but that's not necessarily what you show to people, or you definitely don't show that to people. So this practice of knowing how I feel, and then just being able to say it out loud to someone, like, that's a huge skill. When in
Yeah.
my case, I grew up, that's not what you do,
Yeah.
right? And like, nobody actually cared how I felt about something.
Yeah. Right.
And so if you've grown up in that way, and now you're trying to build a healthy relationship, where did you learn that skill? Or have you not learned it, and have you not practiced it all yet? And then you wonder why the relationship is feeling clunky, and why people are
Yeah.
feeling resentful,
Right.
right?
And well, and
And
I think like
unseen.
across cultures and time. Okay, how do I describe this thing? I'm always talking about how I think human consciousness is evolving, and I think this applies to, you see it in the way art was made. It used to be very collective. We used to paint things about huge army formations, and then over time, especially with the Industrial Revolution, things started becoming more individualistic, and we started looking at specific people more, at ourselves more. And I think the way that most of us have grown up has been this hand-me-down thing from cultures that have been developing. We've needed this cohesion. We've needed to protect ourselves against others in a way that I think modern times and technology are changing. So I really do think we're in the first generations that are more connected with feelings, with interpersonal dynamics instead of like inter-family or inter-village or inter-country dynamics. And all of this stuff is new, like evolutionarily relatively new, and we're all learning how to do it. So it makes so much sense that we didn't come from that, and we're having to learn how to grow these new muscles, and that we might have parents or grandparents who are like, this is so foreign to me. Like, why are you doing this? This is not the way, back in my day, blah, blah, blah. And we're all going to have to face that. We're facing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I'm still learning. This is like almost humorous to say out loud. I'm still learning how to like tell my mom what's going on in my life
Mm,
because like I learned to just not tell anything to anyone
yeah.
and just keep it close to me because someone's going to rain on my parade or think it's dumb or whatever. And so this thing of like feel what's going on with me and like share it, I think I'm really good at that in friendship. And like
Mm,
I've gotten really good at that. Like I've practiced it because that was hard before as well. I think I've gotten stronger at that in intimate relationship. And an area I'm still working on is like to feel, I think the safety is there. Like things have shifted in my family where I don't think my parents are not the way they used to be anymore. Like I feel the love and the care there. There's still the old programming that runs
mm,
that says don't share anything because you're going to be judged. Right. And I still have to
yeah.
work with that and feel the discomfort of that and know that I want deeper connection with them. So when they ask me how things are in my life and what's going on, I'm like, I can feel myself be like, just stay super surface.
Right. Save
And I have to
face.
push beyond that. Save
Yeah.
face. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Only
Think
share
of
a
the
little bit.
difference. Saving face and making connection are such different things. Then I think about how you
They
could,
are.
if you meet someone who's also in the saving face mentality, you might be able to really connect over the need to save face and the methods by
But
which you
that's about
save
it.
face, and yeah, well, that could be a really deep, like that's a really deep experience, saving face. That's pervasive in every area of your life. And I think there could be some really meaningful connection around that. But yeah, I think as we shift more into this relational um, way of connecting, saving face and relating with each other are just not going to go together at all.
Do not go hand in hand. Yeah.
They really
Yeah.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in the era of reality television, and um, I think what are we going to evolve to psychic abilities and telepathy? Like, who knows? But all of this relational getting to know each other stuff, I think, contributes to all of that and is a sharp contrast from the way things used to be.
Mm-hmm. So neat. Just saying
Yeah.
these things out loud connects me to like desire of like deeper connection,
Mm,
with family, because that's the one piece that's harder for me than all
mm,
the other pieces. Because I think I had this, just sort of tie it back to curiosity. I think I was always a curious child and asked questions and wanted to know things, but either felt like the answers weren't very satisfying or there wasn't really room or mutual excitement to be in that place.
mm,
And I think I let that shut me down. Be like, well, forget it. I'm not going to ask anymore.
Right.
And then also I learned, don't tell anything because you're just going to get yourself in trouble. So if you cut out that question asking and you cut out the sharing about yourself, like what else is there left?
Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
that's reminding me of the same episode of 90 Day Fiancé. A woman poses a question and she phrases it. She actually says, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to get mad, but I need to know, blah, blah, blah. And then she proceeded to become furious and enraged and left. And her curiosity, it turns out, wasn't curiosity at all. You know, it was this entirely
Mm-hmm.
different thing, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is such an interesting way. You know, we want people's truth and we want
Mm-hmm.
them to think that we're not going to have any reaction to that, so they're safe to tell us, right? I think for myself, something I'd really love to cultivate more of, or to shift more away from, is feeling any defensiveness to questioning, and to
Mm.
just be able to connect with that genuine interest and curiosity and openness from myself. And on the flip side, to allow the reactions of people, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
I think I'm a person who would not say I won't be mad. You can tell me anything. I would be more inclined to say something like, you know, I need to know this information to move forward. And I can't promise that I won't get mad, but, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I can promise that I still love you and I might now
Mm-hmm.
have a fit and need to sort myself out a bit. I think that's
Mm-hmm. I
important.
think like that's such a, I mean, for me, I would sign up for that. Like I would sign up for someone being honest with me of like, I need to know this thing, right? For the sake of our connection. And that they're honest. I can't promise I'm not going to be mad. And what I can say will stay the same as my love for you. Like that doesn't go away. And I think, that a lot of us needed to hear that as a kid, that I might feel upset and I still love you. And I
Mhm.
actually said that to one of my kids yesterday. We had a little social media incident that my kid is not on this platform. He's not really on many, and there was a little in the mom chat thing going around of like something that's probably not very appropriate. And so I decided to talk to my kid about it and asked him, like, what do you know about this? Like, how are you feeling about this? And I don't think he really saw the severity of it and the seriousness of it. And I could tell like his facial expressions didn't match what he was saying to me. He's like, yeah, mom, I know. Okay. Yes. Okay. But then I could just see he was like trying not to like break out in laughter. So I just called it. I said, is there a part of you that actually also thinks this is really funny? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I get that. Part of you thinks this is really funny. Part of you thinks this is harmless. And is there also a part of you that understands my concern of how this could be harmful for somebody? And he's like, yes. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. And it just felt truer and cleaner to have that kind of conversation and not make
Yeah.
him wrong for like wanting to laugh about it and think that part of it was funny. And
Yeah.
we could sort of laugh about it too. And then I said, and I hope that you will continue to tell me things, and that sometimes you might make choices that aren't very good. And I hope that you're still willing to tell me the truth because that's the only way that I can help you and support you. Right. And I might be upset and I'm still love you and I'm going to help you. Right. And
Mhm.
it was just nice to reaffirm for him and not make that into like, now you're in lots of trouble because you know about this thing and you never told me, or now you're in lots of trouble because you think it's funny and it's actually very serious. It's just, let's let you be human and also let's talk about what's not okay about it. So, in
Yeah.
hopes, like as a mother, in hopes that you're going to continue to want to share with me. But if I pretend I'm going to have certain feelings or not have certain feelings or try to promise that, like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
He
I
wouldn't
think
come to
shutting
me.
down that laughter side is such a problem. in all kinds of relationships. This is a common thing. You'll see somebody's upset. There's a laughter, which is such a natural nervous release, right? And a way to regulate. And to be faced with, like, oh, you think this is funny, is just like, you just have to shut everything down at that point, like,
It just
let's,
makes me
for God's sake, insert some laughter into everything if we can, so that we can all
laugh.
survive.
Yeah, I mean, I think about nervous laughter. Haven't we all been there before? On both
Oh,
sides,
yes. Yeah.
right? And imagine if we could just see it for what it was, is either it's like actually funny, right? Sometimes in a dark way, or were you feeling nervous? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so glaringly obvious. I'm like, something's very incongruent here. And I can tell his words are telling me the thing he thinks I want to hear as a mom.
Mhm.
That, like, yes,
Yeah.
I get it, mom. Okay, mom. And like, he just wanted to burst out laughing.
Huh.
I'm like,
That's so key,
okay.
noticing incongruence and being able to ask questions that will make it make sense. That's some good
Yes. And
momming.
noticing incongruence, like as an adult, when I noticed incongruence in my partners, because I could see that, I could feel that, where their face said one thing, their words said something else, or vice versa, I used to just get mad.
Yeah.
And I used to feel like, well, you're lying to me or something. Like, what's the truth? And I couldn't see that as like, there's just someone feels there's more going on. Someone maybe doesn't feel super comfortable, like owning both sides of this. And I
Mhm.
don't think, back in the day, I made it very welcoming for someone to say, oh, yeah, the incongruence you notice is because part of me feels this way about it and part of me feels that way about it.
Mm.
And with my kid, to be able to see that on his face and not get mad at him, but actually just get curious and call out the thing I think I saw, and have him, like, I could see the relief on his face when he could, actually just on his whole body, when he could just laugh and be like, yeah, mom, like, it is sort of funny. And it was actually a connection moment, because I could
Mm.
see it from his, middle schooler self, why that
Yeah.
was funny, or why,
Yeah.
why he might have thought that was funny.
Relatable, right? His feelings aren't bad
Mhm,
or crazy or wrong. They're relatable.
mhm,
And there's also these
mhm,
other things to consider. Beautiful.
mhm. Yeah. It reminds me
Mm.
of, relationally, can we see someone's good intention,
Yeah.
right? His intention being, like, caught up in this little social media thing was not to harm anybody. They thought it was in sort of some lightness and good fun.
Yeah.
Um, and so if I, as the mom, go in assuming worst of intentions, we wouldn't have
Yeah.
had a connecting moment. There wouldn't have been room for guidance and teaching.
Right.
And that's one thing I think has gotten me far. And when I can stay connected to it, it helps. And it's one thing that I always try to share with people who I was working with. Like, can you practice growing your muscle of seeing good intention? And you
Mm.
have to grow that alongside with your muscle of setting boundaries. Because people will be
Mhm.
like, oh, if I just see people's good intentions, they're going to walk all over me. Well, there's another skill to bring in alongside that, right? But don't, like, throw away seeing good intention because you're afraid to set boundaries.
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking, if your concern had been mostly about saving face with this interaction with your kid, how differently that would have gone.
I would have felt like as a mother, I had a certain role and, like, way I had to be about it. Um, Definitely wouldn't be talking to you or anyone else about my child. Oh, like, gasp, my child thinks it's funny. I would never tell you that, because how would you judge me as a mother and him as a
Mm.
as a kid if I told
Boy,
you that?
yeah, that's such a
Right?
big
And I
difference.
would be, like, really hard on him. Be like, don't ever let anyone see you laugh like that about this thing. That's totally not
Right.
okay. Super inappropriate,
Oh, man.
right?
Yeah, all the
And then
ways
he
we
probably
should.
would have felt really bad about himself, when,
Yeah,
like, I don't need you to feel bad about yourself. I just need you to see how this can be really harmful for someone.
yeah. You're
Right.
teaching him so much beautiful ownership in that moment. He's not having to disown these parts of himself. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Babe,
Yeah.
we're
So
past the time
we're
where you had
trying.
to go. Didn't you have to be
Yes.
somewhere?
I have to be somewhere in 10 minutes, so it's all good.
Okay.
Let's wrap things up.
Wrap it up. Okay. Face. Fish face. We were making fish faces when we started recording.
Well, let me tell you, someone who's concerned about saving face would not be making fish faces publicly. So I think in rewiring that, we should make fish faces.
But this does remind me of the buccal fat removal and the duck lip injections that people get now. So maybe this is the new face.
I can't make my lips go like yours.
If you're
Trying.
just listening, we're making fish faces. This is going to be our closing practice, making fish faces.
And like, if you're with someone, maybe not a stranger, but like someone who you're open to playing with, see if there's an openness to make fish faces at each other.
See if there's an openness to making fish faces at each other.
You don't hear that line very often in your life, do you?
I'm curious. Would you be open to making fish faces with me for a moment?
That is a yes. But I can't
so
talk
good.
and move the face at the same time. Let me see if I
Right?
can fish face talk. Yes, 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 I would.
Feel your bum.
This is a part.
Feel your
Yeah,
fish
this
face.
is a part I think of me that I definitely disowned before, like the silliness part. You're an Egyptian fish.
Oh,
Laughter.
thank you.
How much laughter is in your life?
Yeah. Fish
Bring
faces
some back. This is the
introduced
invitation
after.
to bring some back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
See, I'm the sort of person who would go around the city making fish faces at people just waiting to connect with someone who's willing to make a fish face back.
Can you do that this next week and we can check in to see the result?
Maybe.
And then I would like to do another version of the test when you come to Vancouver. And I would like to compare the results between Salt Spring and Vancouver.
I think that'd be quite a difference. Maybe I'll try. Let's see where my mood takes me.
Okay, follow the flow.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thank you guys for joining us and being silly with us. We love it. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.